Commander Jihu adjusted his ceremonial collar as he stepped onto the bridge of the Stellar Pride, the flagship of the most feared fleet in the galaxy. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency, holographic displays casting blue light across the faces of his crew. Through the massive viewport, 11 other Zephyrian warships maintained perfect formation, their mirror-polished hulls reflecting the distant stars like liquid silver. "Status report," Jihu commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never tasted defeat. Tactical Officer Minho looked up from his console, a slight grin playing on his lips. "Sir, we have visual confirmation of the human vessel. Single ship, approximately 40 kilometers in length. It appears to be, well, frankly, sir, it looks like space junk." The bridge crew chuckled softly. Lieutenant Somin at Communications shook her head in disbelief. "I've seen cargo haulers in better condition. Are we sure this thing is even operational?" Jihu moved to the tactical display, studying the lone blip that represented humanity's presence in this sector. The Galactic Council had been buzzing with rumors about these newcomers for months. Humans had apparently stumbled into faster-than-light travel only recently, like children finding their parents' car keys. Most species took centuries to develop proper spacefaring technology, but humans seem to have rushed through it with typical reckless abandon. "Remember, we're here to send a message," Jihu announced to his crew. "The Council wants these humans to understand their place in the galactic hierarchy. They've been expanding too quickly, claiming systems without proper authorization." Navigation Officer Donghyun nodded enthusiastically. "Sir, my cousin served in the Andromedian campaign. He said humans fight like they've never heard of tactics, all brute force and desperation. Exactly why this should be simple," Jihu replied. "We show them overwhelming force, they surrender, and we escort them back to Council space for proper integration procedures." The Stellar Pride was a masterpiece of Zephyrian engineering, over 200 meters of sleek curves and devastating firepower. Her sister ships in the fleet each carried enough weapons to level a small moon. Together, they represented the culmination of 3,000 years of military evolution. The Zephyrians had perfected the art of intimidation through superior technology and flawless execution. "Distance to target?" Jihu asked. 60,000 kilometers and closing, sir," Minho reported. "Maintaining standard approach vector. The human ship hasn't moved or acknowledged our presence." Science Officer Huna frowned at her readings. "Sir, that's odd. Most species would have detected us by now and attempted communication. Either their sensors are incredibly primitive or they're too scared to respond," Somin finished with a laugh. "I've heard humans are an emotional species, probably paralyzed with fear." Jihu studied the tactical display more carefully. The human vessel appeared to be drifting without power, its irregular shape suggesting either poor construction or significant damage. It reminded him of the derelict ships they occasionally found in deep space, abandoned hulks left behind by extinct civilizations. "Weapons status?" he inquired. "All ships report ready, sir. Shall I target their engines to disable them?" "Not yet. Let them see what they're facing first." The Zephyrian fleet adjusted its formation into an intimidation pattern, each ship positioning itself to create a wall of firepower that no rational being could ignore. It was a formation they'd used successfully against the Kepler Mining Consortium, the Vegan Trade Federation, and half a dozen other upstart civilizations that needed reminding of their place. "Sir, we're receiving some strange readings from the human ship," Yuna called out, her voice uncertain. "The hull composition is unusual. Lots of different materials patched together, but not in any pattern I recognize." Jihu walked to the viewport, gazing out at the distant speck that represented humanity's defiance of galactic order. Probably salvaged from a dozen different species, these humans likely scavenge whatever they can find. "Makes sense," Minho agreed. "I heard they don't even have proper manufacturing facilities on most of their worlds, still using chemical rockets on some planets." The crew's confidence was infectious. This was supposed to be a routine mission, the kind of police action that kept the galaxy stable and peaceful. Show up with overwhelming force, accept the inevitable surrender, and escort the violators to proper authorities. Clean, efficient, and bloodless. Distance 50,000 kilometers and closing, Minho announced. Jihu nodded, his mind already crafting the surrender demand he would broadcast. Something appropriately stern, but not unnecessarily harsh. The humans were new to this, after all. They probably didn't understand galactic law or proper protocols. A firm hand and clear guidance would set them on the right path. The Stellar Pride continued its approach, her crew confident in their superiority and their mission's inevitable success. Minho's fingers danced across his tactical console, but the readings kept changing every few seconds. What had seemed like a simple reconnaissance scan was turning into something that made his stomach twist with unease. The numbers on his screen didn't make sense anymore. "Sir, I'm getting conflicting data," he called out, his voice losing the casual confidence from minutes earlier. "The human vessel keeps shifting in size on our sensors. First it was 40 kilometers, then 60. Now it's reading as nearly 80 kilometers long." Jihu abandoned his position at the viewport and strode quickly to the tactical station. The holographic display showed their target as a flickering, unstable image that seemed to pulse with each sensor sweep. "Run a full spectrum analysis. Check for sensor malfunctions." "Already did, sir. All our equipment is functioning perfectly." Minho's face had gone pale. "The ship isn't just bigger than we thought. It's actively interfering with our scans, like it's designed to hide its true size." Science Officer Hyuna suddenly straightened at her station, her eyes wide with alarm. "Commander, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the human vessel. The readings are off the charts, but they're not coming from any power source I can identify." Lieutenant Somin tried adjusting her communication array, her earlier smirk replaced by nervous concentration. "Sir, I've been broadcasting standard greeting protocols for the past 10 minutes. They're not responding, but I know they can hear us. Their communication systems are definitely active." Jihu studied the tactical display more intently. The human ship's outline kept shifting subtly, as if their sensors couldn't quite lock onto its true dimensions, what he had initially dismissed, as crude construction was revealing itself to be something far more sophisticated and unsettling. "Magnify visual display," he ordered. The main screen shimmered and resolved into a closer view of the human vessel. What they saw made several crew members gasp audibly. The ship's hull was a patchwork of different materials and technologies, but not from scavenging as they had assumed. Each section looked deliberately integrated, as if the vessel had been continuously modified and upgraded over years of active service. "Those aren't construction flaws," Hyuna whispered, pointing at the screen. "Look at the patterns. These are impact craters from energy weapons. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds." Minho zoomed in on specific sections of the hull. "Sir, these gouges in the armor plating, they're from close-range plasma cannons, the kind used by Caraxian battle cruisers. But look here," he highlighted another area. "This scarring pattern matches Thelian disruptor arrays. The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. The Caraxians and Thelians were two of the most aggressive warrior species in the galaxy, known for their brutal efficiency in space combat. Any ship that survived encounters with both civilizations should be legendary." "How is that possible?" Donghyun asked from his navigation station. "The Caraxians haven't been active in this sector for over 50 years, and the Thelian—" He paused, checking his star charts. "They were wiped out in the Centauri Wars decades ago." Jihu felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying this? Human ship has been in service for that long?" "It gets worse, sir," Hyuna continued, her voice barely steady. "I'm detecting trace elements in the hull composition that match weapons used by at least 6 different extinct civilizations. This vessel has somehow survived conflicts that date back over a century." The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of ship systems. Every crew member stared at the human vessel with new understanding. This wasn't some primitive craft cobbled together by newcomers to space travel. This was a survivor, a ship that had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. "Commander," Summon's voice cracked slightly, "I'm picking up faint transmissions from inside their ship. It sounds like maintenance reports. They're conducting routine repairs while we sit here." "Repairs on what?" Jihu demanded. "Weapon systems?" "Sir, lots of them." Minho's console started beeping urgently. "Sir, I'm getting energy fluctuations from multiple points along their hull. It looks like they're powering up systems we didn't even know they had. The human ship's scarred surface began to show subtle changes. Sections that had appeared to be simple hull plating started retracting, revealing weapon ports that had been hidden beneath. What looked like battle damage was actually camouflage, concealing the true extent of the vessel's armament. "How many weapons are we looking at?" Jihu asked quietly. "I've counted over 200 visible ports so far, sir, and I don't think I'm seeing all of them." Hyuna looked up from her science station with genuine fear in her eyes. "Commander, the energy readings I'm getting suggest this single human ship has more firepower than our entire fleet combined." The tactical display updated again, showing the human vessel in a new configuration. What had appeared to be a damaged, drifting hulk was revealing itself as something far more dangerous. The ship hadn't been ignoring their presence out of fear or primitive technology. It had been evaluating them, deciding whether they represented a threat worth responding to. "Sir," Somin said nervously, "they're still not answering our communications. They're just waiting." Jihu stared at the screen, watching the human ship drift silently through space like a predator that had already decided the outcome of this encounter. The main viewer flickered as the Stellar Pride's enhanced optical systems finally locked onto the human vessel at close range. What appeared on screen made every single person on the bridge take an involuntary step backward. The ship floating before them was like nothing they had ever encountered in their military careers. The human Warship was a nightmare made real. Its hull was a canvas of destruction, painted with the scars of countless battles. Deep gouges ran along its flanks where energy beams had tried to slice it apart. Massive craters dotted its surface, where explosions had torn chunks of armor away, only to be filled in with patches of different metals and alloys. The entire vessel looked like it had been through hell and decided to make hell its home. "By the ancient stars," Donghyun breathed from his navigation station. "Look at the size. Of those impact marks, what kind of weapons could do that?" Minho's hands shook as he worked his console, trying to count the visible armaments. "Commander, I'm detecting weapon ports everywhere. They're not arranged in any standard pattern. It's like they just bolted guns wherever they could find space." The human ship's surface was a chaotic maze of different weapon systems. Massive cannon barrels protruded from the hull at odd angles. Missile launch tubes were scattered across the armor like deadly pockmarks. Energy weapon arrays had been mounted in clusters, with no regard for symmetry or aesthetic appeal. It looked like the work of someone who cared only about one thing: killing whatever stood in their way. "Focus the viewer on the forward section," Jihu ordered, his voice barely steady. As the image sharpened, barely visible through layers of battle scarring and hasty repairs, they could make out faded letters painted on the hull: Endurance. The name seemed to mock everything the Zephyrian fleet represented. Where their ships bore proud names like Stellar Pride and Galactic Majesty, this human vessel wore its scars like medals and called itself by the simplest truth of its existence: science. Officer Hyuna's voice cracked as she read her latest analysis. "Commander, the metallurgical scans show at least 30 different types of armor plating. Some of these alloys don't even exist in our databases. It's like they've taken pieces from every ship they've ever fought and added them to their own hull." Lieutenant Somin stared at her communication display in disbelief. "Sir, I'm detecting transmission equipment from over a dozen different species integrated into their communication arrays. Coraxian battlecom systems, Thelian encryption modules, even some Andromedan quantum transmitters." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a ship that had survived battles with various alien species. It was a ship that had defeated them so thoroughly that it had stripped their technology and made it part of itself. Each patch of foreign metal, each alien weapon system, each repurposed component told the story of another civilization that had underestimated humanity. "Look at this section here." Minho pointed to a portion of the hull where massive armor plates had been welded over what appeared to be catastrophic damage. The metal analysis shows this entire area was completely destroyed and rebuilt. Not repaired, Commander. Rebuilt from scratch while the ship was still operational. Jihu felt his worldview crumbling as he studied the human vessel. In Zephyrian culture, ships were works of art as much as instruments of war. They were built to inspire awe, and demonstrate the technological superiority of their civilization. When a Zephyrian warship took significant damage, it was retired to honorable service as a monument or training vessel. But humans apparently approached warfare with a completely different philosophy. They built ships to endure, to survive, to keep fighting no matter what the universe threw at them. The Endurance wasn't just a warship, it was a living testament to humanity's refusal to accept defeat. "Commander," Huna's voice was barely a whisper, "I'm reading energy signatures that suggest this vessel has enough firepower to destroy our entire fleet 3 times over. The weapon systems aren't just numerous, they're overlapping. Every angle of approach is covered by multiple gun batteries." Young Officer Dongyun studied his tactical display with growing horror. "Sir, I've been analyzing their defensive capabilities. The armor isn't just thick, it's layered. Reactive plating over energy-absorbing composites, over structural supports that look like they could withstand a supernova." The human ship continued to drift silently through space, making no aggressive moves, but radiating menace like a sleeping dragon. Its weapons remained powered but not targeted, as if its crew was patiently waiting to see what the Zephyrian fleet would do next. "What kind of battles has this ship seen?" Somin asked, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. Minho checked his historical databases, cross-referencing the damage patterns they were observing. Based on the scarring patterns and weapon signatures embedded in there, this ship has fought in conflicts spanning at least 8 different star systems. Some of these battle scars date back decades. The realization hit them all at once. While other species built new ships for each conflict, humans took their veterans and made them stronger. The Endurance wasn't just a warship, it was a survivor that had learned from every battle, adapted to every threat, and emerged stronger from every encounter that should have destroyed it. Communications Officer Somin's hands trembled as message after message flooded her console. The crisp, professional voices of seasoned Zephyrian commanders now carried undertones of something she had never heard before in military communications: fear, stellar pride. "This is Captain Hyung-sok of the Galactic Majesty. My crew is requesting immediate tactical withdrawal. We're detecting energy readings that exceed our defensive capabilities. Stellar pride, Captain Min-seok here. My weapons officer just informed me that our targeting systems can't get a proper lock on the human vessel. It's like their ship is designed to deflect our scanner arrays. Commander Jihu, this is the Cosmic Valor. Captain Jinsu reporting. Sir, my crew is... They're scared. We've never seen anything like this before." Salman looked up at Commander Jihu, her face pale. "Sir, that's just the first 3 messages. I have 9 more ships requesting permission to fall back to safe distance." The bridge of the Stellar Pride had transformed from a place of confident military precision into something resembling a funeral parlor. The usual chatter and casual banter between stations had died completely. Every crew member stared at their displays in stunned silence, watching the human vessel drift through space like a sleeping nightmare. Lieutenant Dongyun abandoned his navigation console and walked closer to the main viewer, his young face filled with a mixture of terror and fascination. "Commander, at the Academy, our instructors used to tell us stories about ghost ships, vessels that had seen so much combat that they became legends, floating through space like harbingers of death." "Those were just stories to scare cadets," Jihu replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Were they, sir?" Dongyun pointed at the Endurance. "Because that looks exactly like what they described. A ship that's died and been reborn so many times that it's become something beyond normal warfare." Tactical Officer Minho wiped sweat from his forehead as he continued analyzing the human vessel. "Commander, I've been running combat simulations based on the firepower we're detecting. In every scenario, our fleet is completely destroyed within the first few minutes of engagement. The Endurance has enough weapons to target all 12 of our ships simultaneously." Science Officer Huna's voice cracked as she delivered her latest report. "Sir, I'm detecting automated repair systems working throughout their hull. Even as we watch, they're fixing minor damage and upgrading weapon systems. It's like the ship is alive, constantly evolving." The psychological impact was spreading beyond the flagship. Across the Zephyrian fleet, Crews who had started the day with absolute confidence in their technological superiority were now questioning everything they thought they knew about space warfare. "Stellar Pride, this is Captain Young-ho of the Star Destroyer," came another transmission. "My psychologist is reporting elevated stress levels among the crew. They're saying that just looking at the human ship is affecting morale. Stellar Pride, Captain Jae-hyung here. Sir, my junior officers are requesting to be transferred to other duties. They don't want to serve on weapon stations while facing that thing." Ji-hoo closed his eyes, feeling the weight of command crushing down on his shoulders. In 30 years of military service, he had never encountered a situation where his fleet was being defeated without a single shot being fired. The Endurance hadn't targeted them, hadn't made any aggressive moves, hadn't even acknowledged their presence. Yet somehow its mere existence was tearing apart the morale of the finest military force in the galaxy. "Sir," Soman's voice was barely audible, "I'm monitoring internal communications across our fleet. The crews are starting to share stories. It's about humans, rumors they've heard from traders and explorers." "What kind of stories?" Ji-hoo asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "They're saying humans don't just fight wars, sir. They survive them, that they take damage that would destroy any other species and somehow turn it into strength, that they never surrender, never give up, never stop coming back stronger." The main viewer continued to show the Endurance in all its terrible glory. Every scar on its hull told a story of violence survived. Every weapon port promised destruction to anyone foolish enough to challenge it. The ship's silence was becoming more oppressive with each passing moment. "Commander," Dong-yun said quietly, "what if this isn't just one ship? What if this is what all human warships look like? What if their entire fleet consists of vessels like this?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. If humans could build one ship capable of destroying their entire fleet, what did that say about humanity's military potential? How many more ships like the Endurance were out there, patrolling human space, ready to defend their territory? "Status report from all vessels," Ji-hoo commanded, his voice hoarse. As the reports came in, the same theme emerged from every ship, crews paralyzed by the implications of what they were witnessing. The Endurance had become more than a warship. In their minds, it was a symbol of everything they didn't understand about human warfare, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying weapon is the one that doesn't need to fire a shot. The silence from the human vessel was more devastating than any threat could have been. The silence stretched across space, like a suffocating blanket, until it was suddenly broken by a crackling transmission that made every Zephyrian officer jump in their seats. The communication came through crystal clear, cutting through their encrypted military channels as if their security meant nothing. "Zephyrian Fleet, this is Captain Xiangwu of the UES Endurance." The voice was distinctly human, but it carried something that made Ji-hoo's blood run cold. It wasn't the tone of fear or desperation they had expected from a supposedly primitive species. Instead, it was the voice of someone who had seen too much, fought too long, and survived too many battles that should have been impossible to win. "We didn't come looking for a fight, but we're ready if you did." Lieutenant Somin's hands froze over her communication console. The casual way the human captain spoke was more unnerving than any battle cry or threat. It was the voice of a professional, acknowledging another professional, but with an underlying message that was impossible to miss. "We know exactly what you came here to do, and we're not impressed." "Sir," Minho whispered, his tactical display showing new readings. "They're powering down some of their weapon systems. Not all of them, just enough to show they're not planning to fire first." Commander Ji-hoo stared at the Endurance on the main viewer, finally understanding the position he had put his fleet in. This wasn't a first contact situation with a primitive species. This was a veteran warship giving him one chance to make the right decision. "Captain Xiangwu," Ji-hoo replied, his voice carefully controlled. "I am Commander Ji-hoo of the Galactic Council Fleet. We were sent to establish diplomatic contact." A pause, then a sound that chilled every person on the bridge. Quiet laughter. "Commander, we both know why you're here. 12 ships in attack formation don't usually come calling for tea and conversation. But I respect that you're being polite about it." The human captain's tone remained conversational, but there was steel underneath it. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your fleet and head back to Council Space. You're going to tell them that humans aren't interested in being intimidated, integrated, or lectured about our place in the galaxy." Science Officer Huna looked up from her console with wide eyes. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. Every ship in our fleet is hearing this. And you're going to tell them," Captain Seungwoo continued, "that if they want to talk to humanity, they can send diplomats instead of warships. We're reasonable people, Commander, but we don't negotiate at gunpoint." Young Lieutenant Dong Yun stared at the tactical display, watching as the Endurance slowly began to move, not toward them in an aggressive manner, but in a slow patrol pattern that demonstrated complete control of the space around them. Commander Ji-Hoo, the human captain's voice carried a note of weary patience. "I've been fighting in space for longer than some of your crew members have been alive. I've seen what happens when species try to solve their problems through intimidation. It doesn't end well for anyone." Ji-Hoo felt the weight of decision crushing down on him. Every military instinct screamed that he should fight, that the honor of the Zephyrian fleet was at stake. But his survival instincts, honed through decades of combat, told him a different story. The Endurance wasn't just offering him a way out, it was giving him a lesson in military pragmatism. "All ships," Ji-Hoo spoke into his fleet communication system, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind, "assume defensive positions and prepare to withdraw to safe distance." "Thank you, Commander," came Captain Seungwoo's voice, now carrying a note of genuine respect. "For what it's worth, you made the smart choice. There's no shame in recognizing when you're outgunned." As the Zephyrian fleet began its careful withdrawal, maintaining formation but clearly backing down from their aggressive posture, the human captain continued speaking. "Tell the Council that humanity is willing to talk. We're not interested in conquering anyone or disrupting galactic peace, but we're also not going to be pushed around by species who think military might gives them the right to dictate terms to others." The Endurance continued its patrol, its scarred hull gleaming in the starlight like a testament to human stubbornness. As the Zephyrian fleet increased distance, more details became visible on their long-range sensors. The human ship wasn't alone after all. Faint energy signatures indicated at least 3 other vessels operating in stealth mode, positioned perfectly to catch any attacking fleet in a crossfire. "Captain Seungwoo," Ji-Hoo found himself saying, "may I ask how long the Endurance has been in service?" 43 years, Commander. She's been my home for the last 15 of them. We've seen action in more conflicts than I care to remember, but we're still here." As the Zephyrian fleet reached safe distance, Ji-Hoo realized that everything had changed. The galactic balance of power hadn't shifted through conquest or destruction, but through a simple demonstration of preparedness and resolve. Humanity had announced its presence not with threats or boasts, but with the quiet confidence of a species that had learned to survive. Word would spread throughout the galaxy about the encounter. The other species would hear about the scarred human warship that had faced down an entire fleet without firing a shot. They would learn that humans didn't build beautiful ships for show, but created practical monuments to endurance and survival. The Endurance continued its patrol, carrying a new story in its battle-scarred hull. The day an entire alien fleet learned that sometimes the greatest victory comes from knowing when not to fight. The end.